Hello everybody and welcome to ASCI International. I'm very pleased to be here today to introduce you to Australian education via this Austrade Study in Australia event. My name is Amanda Fritz and I am Director of ASCI International. I have had over 2 decades in international education and working with international students. And I'm very proud to be introducing you to our wide range of programs from K to 12, as well as our English language and remote learning options. We specialise in helping overseas students who wish to study our programs and integrate into the Australian education system and study alongside students in their pathway to university. As you'll see from our slides in our presentation today, we have various options for short-term courses, remote education, even all the way to a university foundation program. We have options for any students wishing to study a pathway in Australia. A little bit about the Anglican Schools Commission. The Anglican Schools Commission was founded in 1985. We have 14 schools across 3 states in Australia. And we also have an English language school called ASCI Language School, located in the Perth Central Business District in Western Australia. Most of our schools are located in Western Australia. We have 11 schools and, as I said, our English language school. All of our schools are located within 20 minutes of a major university campus. So no matter where you choose to stay in Perth, we have a campus option that suits you. We also have 3 schools in the eastern states. We have a school in New South Wales called Trinity Anglican College, and we have 2 schools in Victoria called Cobram Anglican Grammar School and Cathedral College, Wangaratta. All schools in the eastern states are approximately 3 hours from Melbourne Central Business District. So why Western Australia? Western Australia is one of the fastest growing cities in Australia. One of the major benefits for studying in Western Australia is that there is only 1 hour time difference from a lot of the major cities within Southeast Asia. We also have direct flights to Perth from Japan. Western Australia also offers a greater diversity of international students. We have a wide range of students from different backgrounds and cultures. And Perth itself, which is the capital of Western Australia, is one of the fastest growing and most prosperous regions in Australia. We also have quality universities and schools in Western Australia. A little bit more about our schools and our school campuses. As you can see on the screen, there is a picture of St Mark's Anglican Community School. St Mark's is actually our largest school within the Anglican Schools Commission with approximately 1,850 students. But the best thing about St Mark's is they have less than 1% of international students. So international students receive very personalised service within a typical large Australian school campus. And you can see the picture, the aerial shot of St Mark's on the campus, showing all of the different buildings and the large grounds for sporting and recreational activities. Likewise, Peter Moy's Anglican Community School is located near the beach, and again, it is a very big school with a large campus and large sporting grounds. All of our schools also offer a wide range of activities from sporting, music, and strong academic curriculum. Here are some more shots of some of the facilities on our campuses. You can see performing arts plays a big part in a lot of our schools as well. Most of our schools have their own performing arts centre, their own indoor sporting centres, senior academic learning centres. So what is the difference with ASC International? With ASC International, we are your one-stop shop for international education in Australia. We have a dedicated international team. We also, as I mentioned earlier, have our own English language school, and generally we have less than 5% international students on every one of our school campuses. So whether your student is after homestay accommodation, student support, overseas student health cover, and entry into their preferred academic program, we help each student fit their best preference to the school. In order to apply to our programs, we have one application form that gives access for students to any one of our 14 schools. We also have one set of entry criteria and one set of tuition fees. Our aim is to make it as easy and as seamless as possible for a student to apply to any one of our schools. One of the other benefits with ASC International is we offer scholarships, and our scholarships are not just purely for academic purposes. We offer a lot of scholarships for various different music, sporting, or leadership and service accomplishments. So we look at the student as an individual and as a whole and determine the best pathway for them, and also determine if they are able to apply for a scholarship. We also offer many leadership programs. We have a team of international student ambassadors which provide students with leadership opportunities to enable them to gain experience in public speaking, conducting meetings and events, those type of things to help the student progress and grow. So a little bit more detail about our specific programs. As I said earlier, our programs range from English language all the way through from primary and secondary year 12 studies. In our English language school, we offer academic English and general English programs. We also have a number of primary schools offering pre-primary all the way to year 6. And all of our secondary schools offer year 7 to 12 studies. Specifically, our year 12 studies, in our New South Wales school, you will be able to study the HSC in year 11 and 12. In Western Australia, you'll be able to study the Western Australian Certificate of Education in year 11 and 12. We also have a unique program for year 12 students who wish to study a university foundation program. We offer what we call the WA Universities Foundation Program. This is a year 12 equivalent program for students who have English as their second language, and it enables a student to study ATAR subjects but also undertake an English language course called English Language and Australian Cultural Studies, and it provides them with a combined percentage score that is transferred into an ATAR equivalent score for entry into university. This is a unique program, and we are one of the only providers in Western Australia to offer this program for our international students. This program is also recognised by most universities in Australia, and it's owned by the 4 public universities in WA. Of specific note, most recently, is our new offering, which is called our Remote Education Anywhere Live program, or REAL. Our REAL program is our remote learning offering, and it enables any student to commence their English studies or their middle schooling via remote learning from the comfort of their own home. So for students to commence in this program, a visa is not needed. As I said, they can learn from home. They participate in real-time classes with real teachers, and are able to progress along their academic pathway as if they were studying with us onshore. ASC uses the latest in technology and educational technology to be able to deliver this program and assist students to facilitate their pathway. Specifically within our real program is a subject that we call English language. English is an additional language or dialect, or EALD for short. EALD is an ATAR subject that students study in year 11 and 12. And this is a subject that is specifically designed for students who speak English as an additional language or dialect. They study this instead of ATAR English. I'm now going to introduce you to our EALD teaching specialist, Miss Kate Simeon. Kate is the academic coordinator for the ASC Language School. Kate has been an EALD specialist for 15 years and she runs our EALD program with our students, and she will be able to provide you now with a demo course or a demo class on our EALD program. Within this program, you will note several different things. So the class itself is a Year 11 class. It's being taught to Year 11 students. The specific content of the class is academic writing and data interpretation. So take note of this class, and the data interpretation section of this class is of particular importance for students, as this is a part of their IELTS testing for English proficiency. So students undertaking this course and this class will be able to gain the assistance they need for when they need to take their IELTS assessment test for entry into university, if they need to do this, if this is required as a prerequisite. So I'm going to hand you over to Kate and let her run the class.
All right, good morning everyone. It's Kate. It's a very rainy Sunday afternoon, so hopefully you guys are all toasty and warm inside. Today's lesson is focusing on describing data. So far in our looking at reading and viewing, we've been looking at tasks with cartoons. Today we're going to look at tasks which have graphs, tables or charts in them instead. So this week, the practice one you'll be doing will have some kind of data in it, and then on Friday you're going to have your first reading and viewing test, which is exciting. So first we're going to look at some vocabulary to help you describe the data you see, and then we will look at some sample questions about these things. Unfortunately, this is not the most interesting topic to learn. I would forgive you if you do it in lots of different sittings, but the good thing is hopefully it will also help you in maths and science or economics or any other subject where you kind of have to interpret data, because it gives you some of the background grammar and vocabulary points. So hopefully it's useful. All right, so step one, describing data key vocabulary. So you will probably want to pause this video a lot to get these things written down. So firstly, this is just an overview of all the kinds of different ways we can present data. We don't use all of them in this subject. So you can see at the top one, we have a flow chart. This isn't something that you usually find in an EALD task. It does come up every now and again in year 12, but very, very rarely. You have a pie chart, which you should have come across in maths. This one does get used a fair bit. You have a bar chart or a bar chart, yep, which you can see there. There's a line chart, which also gets used, a table, which also gets used, and a diagram. Diagrams we don't really use at all. I've never seen one used. So they are the main kinds you get in EALD. Is you will get a pie chart, a bar chart, a line chart, and a table. And these are the kinds that we are going to look at today. All right, so often when we have visual texts which have got data, they talk about trends. So the three trends you can usually talk about is upward movement, downward movement, and no movement. So just going over now some phrases. So this is why I said this might help you in other subjects, because I've broken it up into verbs and nouns versus verbs and adverbs, so different ways you can do it. So here are some nouns and verbs to express upward movement. So you can see rise to, anything is in brackets, means you don't necessarily have to have that word. So you could replace it with something specific after it, like a rise of 19%, or it rose, there was a rise. Okay, so you have rise, a rise, increase, an increase, go up to, grow to, growth, climb to, a climb, boom and a boom, peak at, and reach a peak at. Okay, so a boom is when there is a lot of things, when the numbers are always high. The opposite of that is a bust. And a peak is the very, very tippy top of something, thinking like a peak of a mountain. So pause this now if you need to keep writing these down, but I will move on because you have a pause button. So downward movement, we have, again, a fall to, a fall of, a decline to, decline of, decrease to, a decrease of, dip to, a dip of. So a dip is just a little down, not a lot down. A drop to, a drop of, go down to, reduce to, a reduction of, or a slump. So a slump is when it goes down and it stays, backwards, down for a fair while. Again, pause if you need to keep copying these down. For no movement, okay, so we have level out, which is when it becomes flat after a period of change, or a leveling out. No change, no change. Remain stable at or remain steady at. Okay, they're interchangeable. That's when it kind of stops. Stay at, stay constant at, and maintain the same level. Again, pause so you can write these down. So once we know how to describe downwards and upwards, you also have some adjectives and adverbs to describe the degree of movement. Okay, so starting at the top, here is the biggest, and then at the bottom is the smallest, okay? So the higher up this chart it is, the more dramatic, the bigger the movement is. So to describe something as being dramatic, I might just draw on my screen. Okay, a dramatic decrease would be like bam, or increase, whoops, bam. Okay, sharply is very similar. Huge and hugely, enormous, enormously steep, and steeply. Okay, these ones here are all very, very big. The next one, substantial, considerable, significant, and marked, instead of quite being that big, they would be kind of more on this angle. So it's really about the angles which things form. There is still a big increase, it's still substantial, but it's not as steep as the ones above it. Okay, so there to there. Marked and moderate. Okay, would be kind of these angles. So the incline would be less of a degree. And then you have small and minimal. So that would be really, if things were on a very small incline. So the higher up the top of this chart, the bigger the increase is. As you go down, the smaller the degrees on the angle will get. Again, if you haven't finished writing, pause it. Okay, now these ones describe the speed. So these are more if you have a time frame on one of your axes, you would use these. Again, fastest is at the top, slowest is at the bottom. So you have rapid and rapidly, quick and quickly, swift, swiftly, sudden and suddenly, steady, steadily, gradual, gradually, slow and slowly. Okay, so slow and slowly, these are kind of your markers here. So quick, rapid and swift are all very fast. Sudden is also very fast actually. And then steady is your constant, gradual is very slight, and then slow is slow. Okay, I think this is the final one where you're going to have to write down a whole bunch of words. Oh no, there's one after this, I lied. Some approximations. So sometimes in your graphing points, there are not necessarily specific points, or it's not on a specific line of data, so you need to guess. Because we are guessing, we need to use some language of approximation. Okay, so you have just under or just over. So it was just under 50%, maybe sitting around 47 to 48, 49, just over 51, 52. Okay, well under would be, if you said well under 50%, it might be about 30%, or well over kind of 60. Roughly and nearly is just to use for approximately, around, and about. All right, and then lastly, we just have a few other useful phrases. So the first one we pronounce fluctuated, and that is an irregular rising or falling. Okay, so if we talk about the market fluctuated, it might look like this. Okay, there's no regular pattern to it. There's no rhyme or reason. It's fluctuating. It's going up and down irregularly. Okay, peaked at, we did talk about before, it is the highest point in the graph. So peaked or peaked at. The next one comes from French, and we say it plateau or plateaued, and it's a point where the change stops or flattens out. Okay, so if it was like this, and then the plateau would be this section here, where it kind of becomes a bit more regular and stops changing all of the time. Okay, so plateau we use to describe land that is flat. So we also use it to describe flat data. You also have stood at. So this we use in if there's a specific time you want to use. Okay, so we could say, let's say this is 100. At 1990, the rate stood at 100 before it started to decrease. So we use it to focus our discussion on a particular point of data before we start talking about the change that comes after that point. And then the final one is initially, which just means the beginning. So that would be the first point of data that you have. Okay, so hopefully you have written all of those phrases down. If not, go back and do it, because they are going to come in handy in this second part where we look at some questions, the type of data, the type of questions, and then some sample answers. So we're going to look at 4 types: tables, line graphs, bar charts, and then pie charts in that order. So the first part is looking at tables. So we use tables a lot to show large amounts of precise data. So this is for when it would be too messy to put it into some kind of bar or line chart. In a reading and viewing test, they often ask you about specific changes or differences or similarities in categories, and we use them to ask you to compare and contrast. So here is a little job for you to do. So write 1 sentence answers for each of the following. So this usually comes into reading and viewing tasks, into the short answer. So what is the most popular way to spend leisure time? 2 similarities between the way people in their 60s and 70s spend their leisure time. Why do you think, so this one is an opinion, teenagers and people in their 20s have the highest level of socializing with 4 or more people? Why do you think older people spend more time socializing with fewer than 4 people? So you should pause this recording here to look at the table, because when you press play again, I will give you my answers for it. So write your answers down and then press play again. Okay, so looking at that first question, what is the most popular way to spend leisure time? So it is watching television or videos is the most popular on all age groups. Okay, we can see that because if we look downwards at each of the columns, spending time watching television consistently has the highest amount of minutes, and it has it by quite a lot. So if you wrote that, give yourself 1 mark. 2 similarities between ways people in their 60s and 70s spend their leisure time. So 1 point for each answer would have been given. You could have both groups spend 25 hours of leisure time socializing with 4 or more people. You also could have had 200 hours with 4 or fewer people. Or the other one, which I used, is neither group spends any time on group exercise or sport. Okay, so remember, if we are using a negative, we use neither instead of either. Why do you think teenagers and people in their 20s have the highest level of socializing with more than 4 people? So this is your own opinion, so really it can't be wrong as long as you can support it. So I think it is because they have larger social groups and spend more time with groups of friends at parties or after school. Okay, that makes sense. There's no way we could not give full marks for that answer. Why do you think older people spend more time socializing with fewer than 4 people? You could talk about the fact that maybe they're in a couple, so that they spend most of the time just with their partner, or that maybe they spend it with one other married couple. You could maybe say that they're old and lots of their friends have passed away, so they would have fewer friends. We also couldn't say no to that. Okay, so now we are going to look at line graphs. So you have an example of a line graph here. And what I would like you to do is look at it and use these 4 vocabulary points that I've given you to write one sentence describing the data for each of these phrases. So again, pause the video here, do that, and when you have done them, press play and I will go through the answers with you. Okay, so using initially, remembering initially means the first point of data. So you would need to use this point here. So initially there were 100 cases of X disease in 1983. Okay, that answer is really good because it's using details from the X-axis and the Y-axis. Stood at, okay, so in this one, there were lots of different answers you could have given. I used cases of X disease stood at 200 in the year 1987, okay, which is here, before decreasing in the next year. Okay, you also could have used cases were stood at 100 in 1988 before increasing dramatically in the next year. Okay, dipped. So we can use 2 data points for this. So between 1987 and 1988, cases of X disease dipped back to 100. Okay, and then peaked, remembering peaked has to be the highest point, which in this graph is 1989 and 400. So the peak of X disease was in 1989 at 400 cases, or X disease peaked with 400 cases in 1989. Either one of those would have been fine. So describing a trend, we can look at trends by the difference in levels or the end point compared to the beginning point. So just a grammar point on this one, when describing the difference between 2 levels, we use by with a verb and of with a noun. So unemployment has risen by 10%. There has been an increase of 5%. All right, the third one we're going to look at is bar charts. Now, these are very similar kind of to line graphs sometimes. This is one which has one category tracked over the years. So this could be expressed as a line chart. If it was that, it would look like this, okay? But they have chosen to do this as a bar chart. So can you write one sentence describing the change from one year to the next? So 96 to 97, 97 to 98, 98 to 99. And write one sentence describing the graph overall. So pause here and do that before you move on. Okay, so we could say between 1996 and 1997, there is an increase in the amount of television sold. You could use specific data if you wanted. Between 1997 and 1998, the amount of television sold climbed from 8 million to around 11 million. Okay, I'm using around because we don't have a specific data point in there. It looks kind of in the middle. I haven't measured, so I'm going to use approximation language. From 1997 to 1998, oops, sorry, I forgot to change that. That should be 1998 to 1999, there was a slight decrease in television sales, with sales dropping by approximately 1 million. Okay, again, because I don't have a point in the middle there, I've used approximate language. And to describe overall, we could say television sales rose steadily between 1996 and 1998, though there was a slight decline, or you could have used dip, in sales in 1999. Okay, so more often we put more than one category of things into a bar chart, so like the one you have here. This gives you more points to compare and contrast. Okay, so this one has points of differentiation about the disease. So we have names of disease in this column here and deaths by millions across this axis here. Okay, and we know that this all happened in 1 year because in the title up here it says 1990. So what I would like you to do now is pause and describe or summarize the information in the bar chart in 3 sentences. Okay, so here is my summary in 3 sentences. TB, which is the top one, is short for tuberculosis, okay, just so you know. So I've said TB was by far the greatest cause of death in some land, causing 1.8 million deaths in 1990. Diarrhea caused the second most, 0.5 million, followed by malaria, 0.4, and tropical diseases, 0.3 of a million. Okay, 0.2 of a million of people were killed by AIDS and around 0.1 million by leprosy. A few important things in this. Okay, it is important that we keep the word million there because it wasn't half a person who died. So just for clarity, but it is a lot easier to do 0.5 million rather than 500,000. Mainly because if you make a mistake and drop off zeros, it changes the data and it changes the answer and it would be incorrect. So it is easier just to keep it to whatever the scale says down the bottom. A second thing to notice or to write down is that when it asks you to summarize information, it doesn't want you to infer any information. Okay, it doesn't want you to say TB was the greatest cause, maybe because people in some land have really bad lungs. Okay, it doesn't want you to do anything other than discuss what is in the chart. It's not asking you for your opinion or any cases of why. So only use the data given unless it asks you to do something else. Okay, and our final category that we're looking at is pie charts. So we use pie charts to describe percentages or proportions. The total amount should add up to 100. The color is shown on the key down the side and the data is usually read clockwise. Okay, that's important because sometimes you might have a test photocopied and it is difficult to kind of make out the color coding. So a reminder that in English, clockwise is this direction because that is the way a clock goes. If we wanted you to read something the other way, we would call it anti-clockwise. Okay, and that means go the opposite way to a clock. Okay, so again, can you answer these questions? Pause the slides and answer these before you move on. So one sentence explaining the amount of women completing no schooling or completing only primary school, amount of women completing middle school, and the amount of women completing a university degree. Okay, so my answer was 35% of all women in some land have completed no schooling. This is the same percentage as those who have completed up to 3rd grade. Okay, so both are 35. I didn't want to say that 35% have completed no schooling or schooling up to 3rd grade, because this could be interpreted as 35% out of the 100, where in actual fact this is 70% out of the 100. Okay, so that's why I said this is the same percentage, because I wanted to highlight the fact that it wasn't a total of 35, it was 35 in one category and 35 in the next category. Okay, the amount of women completing middle school, I said only 1 in 10 women in Summerland completed schooling until year 9. Now that I wrote all the words out. If this was in a test, you could have just written, if the question was how many women completed middle school, you could have just said 1 in 10 and you would have still got a mark, or you could have said 10%. Okay, so I'm giving you full answers just so you can see the grammar, but in a test situation you wouldn't need to. The amount of women completing a university degree, again, I've used a full sentence. In 1945, only 1% of women in some land achieved a university degree. You could just say 1% or 1 to 100 as a ratio if you wanted, and still get full marks. Okay, so final slide. This is just a little bit of a snapshot about how to talk about your data in your synthesis. So the way we do it is introduction, topic, circumstances. So this great graph shows the result of our products over 10 years. So the introduction always tells me what kind, oops, wrong highlighter. Okay, what kind of data we were looking at. And then it's got a verb. What's it doing? Okay, it's showing, it outlines, it lists, it represents, it depicts, it breaks down. The topic comes from the title of the graph. Okay, so that's whatever's up the top. And the circumstances gives you the time frame. Okay, or if it's 2 data points, the world, or what the data points are. So when you are looking at your synthesis and writing practice synthesis about this, try to remember this: introduction, topic, circumstances.
So I hope you enjoyed that class with Kate. As you can see, she provides a very engaging type of lesson, so students thoroughly enjoy studying with her. You will also be able to note that our remote offering makes a student feel as if they are part of a classroom on the same campus, in the same location as a teacher. Most of our students make particular note that they enjoy our remote learning option and they do not notice that they're not in the same class as the teacher. I also wanted to draw your attention to our next live session. So our next demo class will be a Year 7 science class that we also offer via our Real or Remote Education Anywhere Live program. We invite you to register to listen to this program and have a look at what we offer in terms of our middle schooling option. We'd love to see you all on the screen and participating in this class. So please make contact and register at your convenience. I also would like to invite you to connect with us. We have various different platforms for social media available, as you can see on the screen. We'd love to see you. We'd love to have you follow what we're doing. We're often posting a lot of different stories and different activities on our social media, so please connect and keep an eye on the activities that we provide to our students and new courses that we are going to be introducing. So thank you once again for your time. I hope that you enjoyed our presentation, and I look forward to welcoming your students to our campus.